Disclaimer! The following episode contains spoilers for Velma. Don't go crying to your mum if we spoil it for you. You've been warned. Welcome to Podcapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. And this week... Oh, Jinkies H. Christ. We're talking about Velma. Cue the music! Hello there, Capers, and as I said, welcome to Podcapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. My name's Scott James Merridew, and this is the show where we talk about various geek and nerd-related topics, and I'm joined each week by a very special different guest. It's Archit Tripathi! How are you doing, sir?
I am good, thank you. Glad to be back.
Glad to have you back. Now, first, a little minor disclaimer. Well, we've got two disclaimers of our own, first of all, Capers. Second of all, remember last episode where I said we were going to do a review of Avatar 2, The Way of Water? Well, we did that. We did a whole episode. Myself and Omar Khalil from A Place to Hang Your Cape, we did an episode, but unfortunately, timing and technical issues meant that we weren't able to actually release the episode. It's recorded and it's all fine, but it's not officially been edited yet, and we may release it at some point. I was afraid to release it because it seemed quite out of date. Avatar's been out for quite a while now by the time we were able to get things back on track. Maybe one day release it as a special podcast episode, because frankly, I'm quite proud of the episode. I think Omar and I did a great job on it. But if you're wondering from the last episode, like, why didn't you do an episode of Avatar? My God, the schedule's so fucked these days. I do apologize for that. Don't cross your fingers. Don't watch this space, but you never know. But we had to do this.
I smell a massive write-in campaign coming.
I don't. I really don't. But it's... Oh, God. This show, Velma, brings us to our second disclaimer. Only 4 episodes of the show have been released. I watched 2 episodes. Archie, you've watched 4 episodes. Is that correct?
I have, yeah. I went ahead and watched all of what they had.
They've only released today as of recording, and I have not had time with work to watch the other 2 episodes. Had I had more time, I probably would have watched them, but I didn't. Point I'm making is, this is not a review of a complete series. This is a review of the first 2 episodes / possibly a discussion about the next 2 episodes. You can't judge a project that's incomplete, not properly. Having said that, we are going to do just that, because frankly, so many people have been talking about this, I did not have the patience within me to hold off on this until the show is completed. And frankly, after watching the next 2 episodes, I don't really want to finish the show anyway. But we're going to get into all of that. First of all, we have to talk about the news! Well, I mean, what sort of news could we talk about? We could talk about anything. We could talk about the new teaser trailer for the upcoming season 2 of Invincible. That looks really cool. That was kind of funny. More serious notes. Alec Baldwin is up on manslaughter charges due to the events that happened during the filming of that film Rust. That's something very serious, but we could talk about that, or we could talk about the thing that everyone is fucking talking about: D&D, Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, and the fucking OGL!
Yes. I mean, again, I will defer to your broader knowledge of this, but I mean, as far as I understand it, it's that classic story of company starts getting very, very greedy, starts screwing over the little guy, and just a once beloved product becomes tainted. Is that the broad strokes of it? Is that more?
That is very much the broad strokes of it, but it's even broader. Well, here's the thing: there's deeper levels to it than that, because you have to understand is this is Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro, and I think a lot of people are pointing the fingers at Hasbro, the parent company of Wizards of the Coast, for not just sort of getting greedy, but also tainting something that didn't need to ever be tainted. This is not them releasing a bad product. This is them fucking with a good product, namely the open game license. Basically, and again, broad strokes, Wizards of the Coast operate on an open game license, wherein the mechanics of the tabletop role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition can be utilized by any third-party company and then sold on their own thing if they're creating original material. There are certain rules and limitations to what you can do with that, but very much it's okay. You are fine to do this as long as you adhere by these reasonable rules, broad strokes again, and that you don't do anything horrible with it, which most people
So,
don't.
so quick question for the slightly less initiated: with something like the show Vox Machina on Amazon Prime, that I think that's based off of like D&D. Is that something that would fall under the OGL
That is
and
exactly
is
something
now
that does
under
fall under the
risk?
OVH, though. Well, that is
Okay.
exactly right, yes, because here's the thing. For a long time, Critical Role not only did their own stuff, but also released their own material based on
Hmm.
5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and their show is in part based on that, like I said. But here's the thing, as you say, it's now under risk because they made changes to the OGL. OGL 1.1, wherein if you make a certain amount of money now for anything D&D related, then suddenly Hasbro and Wizard of the Coast get to take a share of that thing, no questions asked. And there's a lot of language in the OGL original that seems reasonable, like they don't want anyone to promote like hate speech or bigotry or things like that. They clearly want to maintain a
Hmm.
tighter control over their intellectual property. They also just want a slice of the pie. Never mind the fact that it's people making up their own ideas and own creations just based on the pure mechanics, nuts and bolts of 5th edition. But
Hmm.
again, it seems like basically Hasbro saw how many people like Dungeons and Dragons after decades of people either ignoring it, not being aware of it, openly vilifying it, and suddenly it's making money with people like Critical Role and Vox Machina
Right.
and all these other people, all these other third-party companies releasing all these other different products, even small-time creators. People go on Kickstarter, it's like, hey, you want this like 5th edition source book for like these new creatures, these new creations, subclasses, and things like that, or anything like that. And that's basically saying, oh, they're making money. I want that money. But it's only vaguely based on the stuff that someone originally created, and you did say that that was okay for them to do. I don't care. I want their money.
Hmm.
Needless to say, the backlash has been severe. I have never seen this many people talking about D&D that don't usually talk about D&D. It's been actually crazy. People usually talk about like video games or greater pop culture things, but don't often touch, if ever, on Dungeons and Dragons, are now talking about how this latest example of corporate greed has truly
Right.
fucked the fans over. What's made it even funnier, though, is that a lot of longtime Dungeons and Dragons fans are saying, oh, well, if you're going to do that, then we're just going to switch over to other tabletop role-playing games like Pathfinder or Fate or something like that, because there is
Right.
tons of other stuff out there that is not owned by Wizard of the Coast that people I enjoy and are willing to change over for. Suddenly, people are unsubscribing from D&D Beyond, this new subscription service that D&D has, Wizards of the Coast have, that they bought for fucking millions. It used to be third party. Again, another third party thing. They bought it for millions and claimed to be running it for the fans. They introduced a subscriber thing to it, which a lot of people weren't happy about, but lots of people did subscribe.
Hmm.
Now people are unsubscribing. They're not giving them any more money, and they are obviously in panic mode. This is one of those instances where they've made such a stupid, brand-destroying decision. They've been forced to address it. And on D&D Beyond itself, they released a blog post by a gentleman by the name of Kyle Brink. He's an executive producer on D&D, and he has released an open letter called A Working Conversation about the Open Game License brackets OGL. I am now going to read to you parts of this open letter in a really disparaging
Oh.
voice. Archie, you have a choice. Do you want me to read this as Emperor Palpatine or Ed Wynn?
I mean, almost certainly Emperor Palpatine,
Okie doke then. Hi, I'm Kyle Brink, executive producer on D&D. It's my team that makes the game we all play. D&D has been a huge part of my life long before I worked at Wizards, and will be for a long time after I'm done. My mission, and that of the entire D&D team, is to help bring everyone the creative joy and lifelong friendships that D&D has given us. These past days and weeks have been incredibly tough for everyone. As players, fans, and stewards of the game, we can't, and we won't, let things continue like this. I'm here today to talk about Path Forward. First, though, let me start with an apology. We are sorry. We got it wrong. Our language and requirements in the draft OGL, and they're claiming it was a draft OGL. You have to understand, a lot of the information we got about this new OGL 1.1 has come from leaks within the company. Like, even people in Wizard of the Coast aren't happy about this. But anyway,
Requirements of the draft OGL were disruptive to creators and not in support of our core goals of protecting and cultivating an inclusive play environment and limiting the OGL to TTRPGs. We then compounded things by being silent for too long. We hurt fans and creators when more frequent and clear communications could have prevented so much of this. Starting now, we're going to do this in a better way, more open and transparent, with our entire community of creators, with the time to iterate, get feedback, to improve.
Brackets. They're not going to undo this. They're not going to go back. They're just going to find a way to convince us that this is actually okay, or change the language to make it seem like things have changed when actually they're exactly the same.
If this sounds familiar...
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. I was just curious. Is there any kind of base fee that they have been getting for like people who want to use the OGL in general? Like, do they at least pay them like some kind of licensing fee in general? Or
no, that's the thing, because the whole point of the Open Game license is that you can, as long as you give Wizard of the Coast proper credit, you can do it all for free. There is no license. Okay. But under this new OGL 1.1, if you make a certain amount of money, you have to give Wizard of the Coast a big old fat slice, even though they've not worked at all on it. Like, you're not working with Wizard of the Coast, they just get to claim some of your money. It's like if you used to live in a house and you paid your landlord rent, but then you leave that house, but then the landlord comes back like, you're still alive. You're alive because, I let you live in the house, so you still got to pay me rent. Like, fuck you, I don't live there anymore. I owe you nothing. But that's what Wizard of the Coast is all like. Nice. Blah, 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 blah.
Here's what to expect. On or before January 20th, we will just share a new proposed OGL documentation for your review and feedback, much as we do with playtest materials. After you review the proposed OGL, you will be able to fill out a quick survey, much like Unearthed Arcana playtest feedback surveys. It will ask you specific questions about the document and include open forum fields to share any other feedback you have. The survey will remain open for at least 2 weeks and will give you an advance notice before it closes so that everyone who wants to participate can complete the survey. We will then compile, analyze, react to, and present back what we heard for you.
Right. Here's okay. So, again, they're not just saying, screw it, we're sorry, we're scrapping it, this isn't going forward. They're going to try and find a way forward with this. Again, a lot of this seems like it's coming forward from Hasbro. But also,
finally, to preserve some stability and clarity, we are committed to giving creators both input into and room to prepare for any update to OGL.
Creators read third-party people like Critical Role and all sorts of these other people.
Also, there's a ton of stuff that isn't going to be affected by an OGL update. So today, right now, we'll lay out the areas that this conversation won't touch. Any changes to the OGL will have no impact on at least these creative efforts. Your video content, whether you're a commentator, streamer, podcaster, live play cast member, or other video creator on platforms like YouTube and Twitch or TikTok.
Right, here's the thing though. They're saying this thing like it's a good thing, like don't worry, you won't be affected. But even under the new OGL, it was clear that they weren't going to be affected. Some people speculated that, but most people are just like, no, clearly in the language set out by this new OGL, that was never going to happen. So they're placating people who have already been basically placated.
Your accessories for your own content. No change to the OGL will affect your ability to sell minis, novels, apparel, dice, and other items related to your creations, characters, and worlds.
I mean, that sounds better, but again, I imagine that depends on how much money you make.
Non-published works, for instance, contracted services, VTT content, DM skill content, your OGL 1.A content, your revenue, there'll be no royalty or financial reporting requirements, your ownership of your content. You will continue to own your content with no license back requirements.
So, this may seem like a positive step forward, and in many ways it is, but again, they're not backing down. They're trying to find a way forward. And I don't think this is going to work because they have no power here. They really don't. Because, again, like we said, they can just switch to other TTRPGs. And you could, if they really want to bring people to court about this, people like Critical Role could argue that their work is now so firmly derivative from the original source material. They've changed multiple names and characters and settings from the original source material. So, like, there's a character called Vecna that we've all heard of from Stranger Things, right?
Yeah.
Well, he was present in the original campaign of Vox Machina, but now his name has been changed. He's now just called the Whispered One in Legends of Vox Machina. So they were smart canny with that, so they could argue in court. Problem is, though, if they have to argue in court, that's going to cost them time and money, which they'd rather not spend. And bear in mind, they are a small company, which probably couldn't afford that in the long term, at least. And that's the big thing. They could win, but Hasbro has all the big lawyers and all the big money and things like that. So this is still very much a problem. This bad press they're trying to get rid of is not going to go away until they just full on say the OGL was a bad idea and they scrap it. Notice in that open letter that they put out, they didn't actually apologize for the OGL itself. They apologized for poor communication.
Right.
Which is not the issue. The issue wasn't we were hearing back from you. The problem was that you were fucking being greedy bastards, and we had to find it out from leaked sources, from leaked documents inside your own company.
Yeah, I mean that's just standard corporate speak. They never admit fault of the actual thing that they're at fault for, because that would mean that you're admitting fault, and in case it goes to any kind of legal action. But no, I mean, do you think there's some kind of middle ground in that, though? Because a lot of things do have certain licensing. Like, what if it was, okay, you pay $100 for the year, and then you can do whatever you want with, based on these universes. And
that's a very good point.
Just $100 a year, and then you get to do it, and that's it. And as long as you keep renewing the license, you get to keep doing whatever you want to do, and you can make as much as you want to make off of it, as long as you do just this little one-off licensing fee. Because I feel like that's not too... I was a little surprised to hear that there was no fee at all, which is an amazing arrangement. It really is, in terms of encouraging creators, because, even like $100 licensing fee for someone who's maybe just trying to start out could be unaffordable in some circumstances. But, I feel like, maybe that's a reasonable middle ground where they get a little slice of something coming in, and there's enough popularity and growing popularity that even that little bit could still amount to a nice little line on their revenue sheet at the end of the year.
That's a very, like I said,
get to do their thing.
That's a very good point. There's just one small problem with that. If that was the new service that they're providing straight off the bat, hey, you want to make stuff based on our property, you can do that. You just got to pay a small licensing fee. That'll be fine. But for a long time now, decades, they've had the OGL saying that you can do it all for free. You can't go back from that, because Wizards of the Coast have branded themselves as the company that is very in tune with the fans, has deep roots in the fan community and things like that. And you can't really go step back from that. You can't say
devil's advocate. I feel like that has been done to pretty reasonable success in a lot of other services. Like if you look at streaming, a lot of streaming was initially free or much cheaper, and over time has gotten more expensive, or they've introduced ad tiers and stuff like with Hulu. But people are still there, right? People are still watching, and it hasn't, there's some news stories every now and then about like subscriber drop off or whatever, but for the most part, these companies are still huge, and they're still profitable, and they're still making a lot of money off of those things. And so in terms of the reality of whether, does it suck for people who've been able to do it for free for so long? Absolutely. Is it out of the question in terms of a lot of current business models and, the way things go, and just the way late stage capitalism just inevitably tends to be? Unfortunately, I feel like there's gonna have to be some level of, either the mass abandonment or some level of compromise. And
but again, the streaming stuff, that's a good analogy. But the problem is that you can't. Here's the thing: you start off with nothing. Then they went massive, like huge fees for people to do the license. And if they did what they suggested, saying, okay, how about just for example, $100?
Yeah, they went.
If they started off from that, exactly, yes, went from woo to like, but you can't do that, unfortunately.
Ease people into it. You got to ease people into it.
And they didn't. And now, and again, the half the problem is like, imagine if there was a streaming service right now that was completely free. That I mean, let me put it this way: BBC iPlayer, I think. Actually, I'm not subscribed to BBC iPlayer, but
yeah, I mean, there's a there are a few. Excuse me, I think there's like Tubi here in the States. That's
let's
supposedly
say
free,
there was a
but
version of
it's not great.
Netflix that
Mhm.
was free. That was completely
Mhm.
free. Had all the same stuff as Netflix. It was just free, maybe slightly different stuff, but for the most part, free. Would you go back to Netflix? No. And look, there's Pathfinder over there in the corner that's just as enjoyable, just as fun, has, I believe, similar licensing stuff. I haven't really looked into that in fairness, but people can enjoy just as much. That's a thing. They don't have a real leg to stand on. They don't have the market cornered. They were the most popular, but it was a very wide market, and their
But
popularity
here's
is
the
now
thing:
dwindling.
if we go back to the streaming analogy, is does it have Parks and Rec, for instance? Like I legitimately, I got a Peacock subscription because they took Parks and Rec off of Netflix, and I watched that show at least once a year, every year. It's my favorite show, and so like it's just my wife and I, we love it. We just relax to it at the end of the night, and so I legitimately initially signed up for Peacock just because it was no longer available on Netflix, and so I signed up for Peacock for that reason. And when it was available on Netflix, I still was watching Netflix. You know what I mean? So, like in terms of that, in terms of paying for a new thing that you weren't previously paying for because you love the property that much, I feel like within the D&D community, there's definitely gonna be people who love that universe enough, and credit to whatever other RPGs there might be out there, but so some people are gonna have that level of love that's that deep that
Oh,
if
yeah.
there was a reasonable compromise, they would probably be willing to accept it. And that's the problem I think that Wizards of the Coast had, is that they just went balls to the wall way too fast.
Those people that you mention, most of them are not content creators. The people just who enjoy the D&D world, which is
Mhm.
fair enough. But we're talking
But don't you
about the
think if
people.
you've created some content in this universe and you've like poured so much of yourself into it, wouldn't that also give people some pause into being like, well, if it was only like a reasonable, affordable fee, I would probably pay it because I poured so much of myself into this already.
But even here's the thing: the only thing that really separates the new OGL from that is that it's a tiered thing. You have to make over a certain amount of money. If everyone had to pay like a flat licensing fee, that would put a lot of the smaller content creators out of business. They wouldn't be able to do what they do, even for a relative
Right. So,
$100 a
but I
month.
mean, isn't the
$100 a
tiered
year, sorry.
approach good then? If if you're
Well,
in
no,
that
because
kind of a
again, they have
progressive
not
spirit.
contributed anything. The amount they're asking for is so huge, despite the fact that they're not. Let me put it this way: Wizards of the Coast are not producers on Critical Role. Again, for an example, they do not contribute. They're not head writers or story artists or anything like that. It's all a completely separate, independent company that was allowed to license certain things, but now isn't, for an absurd slice of the pie that they have not contributed to. You have to understand there's no like roll +1 perception or whatever in the show, you know?
But so do you think that the real issue is the amount that's being asked for or
I mean,
was
it's
asked for,
everything.
or is
There's
it
no one
just
thing. It's just,
asking to pay in general? Like, because I feel like there would be, if within reason, there would be a willingness to
well,
be
again,
okay
within
with paying.
reason. Reason is the word. There's so much of that isn't reason. It's the
Yeah.
amount. It's the fact that they were asking for none beforehand,
Mhm.
and it's the fact that it's screwing with a good thing and impacting independent third party smaller creators.
Yeah.
There's no one thing that's the problem. If they had mitigated those things, started off smaller, maybe people would be
Yeah.
less upset about it. But the fact is, they didn't, and that has hurt their brand. And
Mhm.
now, unfortunately, let me put it this way: when you throw a brick through someone's
Yeah.
window,
Once the
they're never
genie's out of the
gonna
bottle.
they're never gonna look at you the same way again. You might pay for
Yep.
the window, and you might promise to never do it again. You might even never do it again. But the minute you walk by the house, they're gonna think, "Is he gonna throw the brick again? Is he gonna throw the
That
brick again?"
relationship is inevitably soured. Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that this isn't entirely their fault, but there have been so many other companies that have done so many other shitty things, particularly with the video game community. And we
Mhm.
thought like TTRPGs, for the most part, had largely been gone away from that, but apparently not. And that's why there's so much outrage and so many people sharing in the outrage. That's why so many people have commented on it, because this is a big deal. We could argue about what if they did this, what if they did, all the like, but that is what they did. And it's not good. On that note, speaking of all this horrible capitalist bullshit, I think it's time for some ads. Check them out.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
So, we just went on a long-winded rant about some cynical corporate bullshit. Let's talk about some more cynical corporate bullshit. Velma. Oh, God.
Oh, Velma.
Oh, Velma. Why, Velma? I was looking forward to this, Archit. I was. I like Velma. She's like one of my favorite characters. She's awesome. And I like this new bent she's had recently in the last couple of years where she's become a bit more snarky and she's got a little bit of an edge to her while still being smart and, you know, friendly and things like that. I like that. I like that about Velma.
Mm-hmm.
And they took the worst aspects of those, or the worst potential aspects at least, and fucking ruined them. I thought Mindy Kaling was going to be great as Velma. She's not! Fuck! How did this happen?
I will say, sorry, as somebody who has watched through all of what was currently available, all 4 episodes, I will say I feel like it gets a little bit better if you can stay with it for that long. That said, I do feel like, especially the pilot, tests your patience. It really tests your patience, and I can see how if you only watched maybe if you noped out after the first 15 minutes or the first episode, which I can see as being a valid response, then I see why it's getting a lot of the hate, but over time, I feel like the show does mellow out. I'm probably at this point going to give the season a chance, just because I feel like it's starting to find itself. But that first episode just really just punches you in the throat, and it just never stops.
Repeatedly, yeah.
Oh my God, it tries so hard to be so edgy.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's the thing. There was a time where the show, in its current state, could have worked. There was a time where we liked cynical, edgy reboots of shit. Not really anymore.
Even just the humor. I felt like a lot of it reminded me of, I don't know if you're familiar with Clone High at all.
Oh, yes. Clone High.
So a lot of it kind of reminded me in the first episode. I was like, okay, this is what Clone High was. But at Clone High, at the time that it was released, was clever for doing that.
Yeah.
By now, this has been done enough that it's no longer fresh or super clever. And so
it's not the 90s anymore, or the early 2000s. People don't like cynicism. They like being genuine and authentic.
Yes.
In a post-Ted Lasso world, this shit don't fly anymore.
I love it. Yeah, exactly. Dude, exactly. That first episode, there were so many moments where it was trying so hard to be self-referential to itself and break a fourth wall, but not in a clever or funny way, just in a way of, look, we did this. And that's not enough anymore. Audiences are smarter than that. And that pilot really made me feel like I felt like they didn't respect the viewer as an adult.
There is no respect for anything in this show.
They kept explaining everything over and over again. I was like, I'm not a child. Like, if this was a children's show, I would understand that. But in the first few minutes of this, we've had a gruesome murder and a fucking naked locker room scene. And so obviously this is not meant for children. You know that your audience is adults, so treat us like adults.
Well, you see, it kind of hates its audience. Because here's the thing. Right, so we start off with the first episode. What's the first thing we see? 2 cockroaches humping. 2 insects boning right there in the shower room. And that really sets the tone for the rest of the episode, if not the rest of...
Real.
Well, because here's the thing. Then it starts with a gratuitous nude shower scene. Fuck, that's hard to say.
Which they reference themselves as like, oh, pilots always have so much nudity.
But that's the thing. That's the thing. They compare themselves to Riverdale, saying, "Oh, you know how Riverdale has all those, sexy moments in the opening show. You got to have a sexy moment in the opening show to have, get the audience hooked. Isn't that stupid? Isn't that cynical?" As they soap up their naked teen bodies.
Exactly.
And here's the thing. Riverdale, I can actually respect more than this show because they did all this stupid stuff that they're talking about and doing, but at least they didn't talk about it.
Yeah, it's a matter of like doing it sincerely, and because you're doing it so insincere, like I get that they were making a mockery of that trope, but
while doing the trope,
it still felt like like an insincere mockery of that trope. Like it just wasn't a good mockery. Like there's probably a smarter way to do it that would have been funny, but then they just they did the trope while complaining about the trope.
And continue to do it. The scene lasts for fucking ever.
And they didn't make a good enough joke at any point to justify doing that hypocrisy.
This is, you know what this is? This is fucking Dan Harmon's rejected meta jokes. This is what it is. Yeah. These are meta jokes that Dan Harmon thought, oh no, that's too stupid. I can't do that.
And that was the other thing too, is I felt like they stressed out their writer's room for that pilot to just be like, every line has to be a one-liner. Every single dialogue has to just be like a pithy one-liner joke. And it's like, no, calm down. Just let the plot play out a little bit. Which is why, again, I say that as you go later on, like further deeper into the show, it does start to let things play out and actually let the plot do its own thing, and so it does start to get bearable. But my God,
bearable and good are not the same thing.
Yeah, it gets decent enough that I'm going to try to give it a chance for the rest of it. But again, if you watch just the pilot and you noped out after that, I can't be mad at you. I can't. I get it. That response is fully understandable.
But here's the thing, though. It's I don't want to have to push through on a fucking Scooby-Doo franchise. I had to do this once with the fucking live-action movies, and this doesn't even have that amount of charm, frankly. Because let's go right back to the beginning, right? Not even the beginning of the episode, just the idea of it. So the teaser trailer was released a little while ago, and it's Mindy Kaling as Velma. And there was a mixed reaction. Some people said, "Ooh, looks kind of interesting." I was in that camp. Other people said, "Oh, this is stupid." And a lot of people saying that were, how could I put this delicately, the bigots.
Gross. Racist.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was, and because here's the thing, there are some race-swapped characters here. I don't even like using the term race-swapped because, frankly, the great thing about the Scooby-Doo characters is that if you keep their personalities intact, you can have them be as any race at all.
I think what was it, the show said race blind casting, right? Is that
that's another thing they could use. I mean, I hesitate to call that because they make deliberate, definite references to the characters' ethnicities.
Right.
We'll get onto that when we get to that. But, spoiler alert, Mindy Kaling, who is an Indian American actor, is now playing Velma. This is fine. Okay? Because here's the thing, this is not the first time this has happened to Velma. In the previous Scoob movie, which was terrible, she was portrayed by, I can't remember, what's his name? She was a Latinx character. And before that, she was also played by Hayley Kiyoko in 2 live-action direct-to-DVD movies. So you can do this. You can do this. This is fine as long as you keep the character intact. They have not done that.
Yeah, it's not Mindy Kaling playing Velma. It's Mindy Kaling as an animated character in a sweater. In a Velma
Mindy
sweater.
Kaling with in a sweater with the charm
entirely
erased.
She's basically entirely herself. Like the character that she's played in pretty much all the things that we've ever seen and loved her in. She's playing that, which is definitely a bit of a reimagining for the character. I mean, it's kind of in line with where the character's been going over the last few years. You know, getting a little bit sassier, a little bit more independent, a little more assertive, and, you know, less of that meek Velma thing. You know, it's definitely taking a big leap forward, but like, and it is, you know, there are people who more or less play the exact same character throughout their careers, and Mindy Kaling right now, at least it seems like she's doing that, which, you know, so
that worked
far,
in Inside Out, doesn't work here
with great success. Right now, this is being a little bit less well received. You know, again, for me, I'm going to give it a chance because, like, for instance, like, and part of the reason is, like, I hated Breaking Bad, like, the first couple of episodes. I was like, this is slow as shit. What is happening? I was like, I'm out.
Hey, compared to most British dramas, Breaking Bad is, like, fast-paced the first couple of episodes.
Yeah, so for me, I was like, this is so slow. Nothing is happening. What's going on? And then somebody was like, no, that's the point, though. It's slow, and then it builds and builds and builds. And so you have, it starts out slow. That's part of it. That's deliberate. And I was like, all right, fine. Let me see what happens. And so, you know, had I not given it a shot after not liking the first few episodes, but still giving it a chance, I would have missed out on, you know, one of the greatest shows ever made. And so I'm going to give this a shot. I'm not saying that this is going to be a Breaking Bad. I'm not saying that this is ever going to reach those kind of lofty heights, but I'm going to give it a chance because based off the 4 episodes, like, I'm okay to see what happens in the 5th episode. Like, there's enough character development happening later on in the show that I want to see what they do with it, and maybe they actually will make some interesting and more poignant choices. Like, it seems like that's the direction that they're going in, where it starts to get a little bit deeper. And I mean, definitely I felt like later episodes, the quality of the jokes gets better, and it's less shove as many jokes down your throat in a 20-minute episode as possible, and it's more well constructed. But it's hard. It's just hard.
I know. Well, here's the question: as we're talking about this, you say it gets better. Does it get good?
I think it's starting to approach good.
That's not good enough.
It might be, but I mean, again, I don't know. Like, I feel like everybody's taste is also different. I've liked shows that nobody else liked, and I've hated shows that everybody else loved. And so,
well, there's always going to be an element of that, yeah. But you have to remember is the thing that I think makes so many people mad is that this is not an original concept. This didn't come out of the blue, out of Mindy Kaling's head. This is based on fucking Scooby-Doo. And you can do reimaginings. You can do that. Otherwise, the show would not have been going on this long. It started in the fucking late 60s, and we're still watching it today, and it's still kind of fresh because people do new things with it. That it has to happen, and that can work. But you've also got to be respectful of where that comes from. Even fucking Scoob, which I'm pretty sure only I watched, myself and Gillian. I think we're the only ones who actually watched that movie. But even that still somewhat respected its original source material. It wasn't good, but it came from a place of respect. It even made me appreciate the characters more. Like, here's the thing. There's a scene in Scoob, and I can't believe I'm saying this, where Simon Cowell explains the roles of the Mystery Gang. There's no amount of context I can give that will make that make sense. But he basically says, like, Fred, you're the muscle. Velma, you're the brains. Daphne, you're the heart, the empathy. And I was like, hang on a minute, that's a really good point. Daphne has always been very empathetic and sort of a people person. That makes a lot of sense. I always thought that Daphne was kind of useless and pointless. I liked the character, but I saw her purpose within the team. Now I do. Scoob made me appreciate Daphne. All that empathy is gone from this show. Velma's intelligence is kind of stripped away in this. Maybe in the next 2 episodes it gets better, but the first 2 episodes, her intelligence is just her being judgy and snarky. There's very little mystery solving, and the few mysteries they do show her solving is basically just her blundering into situations. There's no deductive reason, there's no analysis. They keep on talking about, oh, she's a genius, oh, she's so smart. Okay, Show me that. Show, don't tell. I am sick of saying this. I learned this the first week of university.
I agree. And again, I mean, I will say I do feel like that does start to happen a little bit later on, but yeah, it is sloppy in terms of like, especially knowing, I think it's maybe expecting audiences to be a lot more patient with it than they are these days. And
good luck.
I mean, and again, like I will say it with I will agree with anybody else. I feel like that pilot was a hot mess, and it was a really terrible, like starting yourself off on the worst foot possible, because it just tried way too hard, and it did too much telling, not enough showing, like you were saying, you know.
But then the characters keep on going, and we're subjected to them. Daphne is now a vapid, mean girl. Like, I could see Daphne being like giving into peer pressure and hanging with the cool kids, which is what the show is doing. But then she's also just so mean to everyone. In fairness, I shouldn't really say that. Everyone's mean in this show. Everyone is horrible to everyone. There's one nice character. We'll get to him. But the other character is Fred. Oh, Fred. Oh, my dear Fred. Oh, my sweet, sweet baby Fred.
Oh no! This is much worse.
Fred, for this last couple of days, we talked about how Velma's become a bit more snarky. Fred has become a himbo. He has become sweet and kind, but also kind of dim, head thoughts, no empty, and he's just obsessed with either solving mysteries, traps, or his van. That's the thing, and that worked for him. That fucking worked. There are whole compilations on YouTube of Fred for the various incarnations, just acting just a little bit dumb, but still very sweet and kind and just inoffensively lovable. And that's what we kind of love Fred for. Now, he's a spoiled, rich jerk baby man.
You know what it is? It's almost, you know what it is? I feel like what's happened is that they mashed up Scooby-Doo with It's Always Sunny, in the sense that, like, everybody, like, pretty much all of these people are deeply flawed individuals now, like, and we get to see all of that, like, because, like, Fred, for instance, is basically Glenn Howerton now. He's basically Dennis now in so many ways. He's like this spoiled little baby rich boy, like, and he's gone from being kind of a lovable himbo to being, you know, now what is a much more recognizable thing in 2023 is a fuckboy. Like, that's what Fred is now. Like, the new Fred is a fuckboy now, and he's just like a rich fuckboy. And
Fred is supposed to be the prince among fuckboys. He's supposed to be the exception.
I mean, he still is the prince among fuckboys, but like,
the prince of the fuckboys.
It's like being the best of the worst. So like,
oh god,
yeah. So he's the best at being the worst now, you know, and that's kind of like his new power is. I think that's what they did, is that they put the flaws out on everybody, and you know, not to sound like a broken record here, but like that does, all of these characters do receive a little bit more development as the show goes, which is why I'm curious to see what they do again in like episode 5 and beyond, because like they do start adding some depth to Daphne's like meanness and vapidness, and they do start adding a little bit of like you know, whether. But
we already had depth. This is the problem. This is the problem.
They do add some stuff, some layers.
This is the problem I have, though, is that Daphne already had depth in previous shows. It's not like this new show comes out and we just... Yes, she did. They built on her. Mystery Incorporated, fucking arguably the best Scooby-Doo show ever made, gave her tons of depth, as to all the other characters. And
I mean, yeah, I will say, I'm speaking as somebody who basically watched the Scooby-Doo cartoons back when I was a kid, and then now...
I never stopped, because I never grew up.
Maybe that those movies with Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze, I think I watched one or two of those back in the day. I don't remember them very well, but I think I watched those, and that was about it. So in terms of what I remember as a kid from Scooby-Doo, you know,
that's fine. That's fair enough, because that was the... Exactly, yeah, that was the original. That was the originator. They didn't have a ton of depth back then, because they didn't have to, because it was the 60s/70s, and frankly, it was a kid's show, and also there were like a million other Scooby-Doo shows. There was like Jabberjaw, the Funky Phantom, all these sorts of things. I'm not making that name up.
Funky Phantom.
Oh, you remember?
No, I do. I remember the Funky Phantom.
There was a ton of stuff like that.
There was that other gang of teenagers who had a shark, a talking
Jabberjaw, yeah.
Oh, that was Jabberjaw. Right.
There was also the one where they had a sentient car.
The sentient car, wasn't that also Jabberjaw? Weren't they two together?
Maybe, I don't know. It was Hanna-Barbera, it was the 60s, there was all kinds of shit going on.
Where they were just all in there mashed up.
Possibly. But like I said, they didn't have depth, but they have built on that since then. And in fairness, I wouldn't expect you to know that if you haven't watched
just
the shows.
Real quick, though, can we, in case anyone is listening from Warner Brothers, Wacky Races, let's get that reboot going. Like, that would do some shit. Like,
because again, in the Scoob movie, they had Dick Dastardly as the main villain.
I gotta see this now.
He's played by Jason Isaacs, and he's the best part of the movie. He's the only good part of the movie.
Because a live-action Dick Dastardly deserves to be seen.
Oh, I don't know about live action, but I certainly would not object to a reboot of Wacky Races, possibly featuring Jason Isaacs and Muttley. Oh God, it's
please, Warner Brothers, please
make that happen.
That's the one we want.
Oh God, it's just. Do you know what I love about Wacky Races? Last tangent on Wacky Races. I love how Dick Dastardly could have always won if he just didn't stop to cheat. Because in the beginning of every single one of those episodes, he zooms ahead in the meme machine, whatever it's called.
That's the lesson, is that crime doesn't pay.
Exactly, yeah. But if he didn't stop to sabotage the other racers, he could have zoomed straight to the finish line and won every single time. But no, he was just I love that. I love that concept. But then again, I was also the person who watched Catch the Pigeon, featuring him.
Also, hey, you want a reimagined, like, strong female character? Penelope Pitstop, right? Like, that's...
Yeah!
She's a race car. She's a female race car driver in a completely male-dominated circuit. I mean, there you go. So much gritty drama right there.
That shit writes itself.
You know, and stays fly in the pink. Like, she's like, that was Elle Woods before Elle Woods.
Oh my God, you're absolutely right. So we're all coming up with better concepts than this show, because this show had to, in fairness, this show was suddenly hamstrung somewhat, because, believe it or not, despite being a HBO, a Warner Brothers Max, HBO Max show, whatever it is, owned by Warner Brothers, they don't have the rights to all their characters, which is why we have Norville. Norville is Shaggy.
Oh yeah. Okay, wait, is that why they couldn't use the Shaggy name?
That's the rumor. Because here's the thing: they had the rights.
He hates drugs. Like, that was the biggest part that I was like, okay, you know what? You can make Velma like snarky and mean, and you can make Daphne like just like even meaner, and you can make Fred a fuckboy. Like, all of those things I'm on board with. But like, how are you going to take away one of the greatest and most original stoner icons of all in time? Like,
what the hell, man?
Come on. Look how they massacred my boy like that. Like, look what they did to my boy. Like,
Fred is my boy, Shaggy's your boy.
The greatest stoner icon of all time. And I really hope that maybe, and that's another reason why I'm trying to give this a chance, because I'm like, maybe as the series goes on, he discovers drugs and then like really likes them, and we see the origin of it, and that would be cool. But like, as of right now, he's super straight edge, and I mean, I love Sam Richardson. I adore.
Oh, yeah.
So like, I'm on board. I'm still on board with Norville because of Sam Richardson, and I'm just hoping at some point, he just gets high as hell. Like, I'm looking forward to that happening.
Because, I mean, I appreciate the fact that maybe hamstrung, but this is not the way to do it, because not only does he not have Shaggy's actual name, Shaggy's full name is Norville Roberts, so I get where they came from with this one, but not only does he not have his name, not only does Sam Richardson, who I also love, I love fucking Werewolves Within, that was a fucking excellent movie with him in the main lead, like, he was great in that. But he does not sound at all like Shaggy. He's not trying to do a Shaggy-esque voice. Will Forte in the Scoob movie, again, did a better job than this.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely being Sam Richardson.
But the worst...
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
not playing a character.
He's fucking Richard Splett or whatever he played in from Veep. But
Yes,
here's the thing. The big thing gets me is one of the race changes they made. It was with Norville. Shaggy is now African American, which is fine. That's great. He does not look like Shaggy at all. No, you can't just put a green shirt on a black guy and say that's Shaggy. No! That does not look like Shaggy. It does not look or sound or act at all like Shaggy at all. And then I'm so glad in that case that they didn't call him. Yeah, I'm glad they called him Norville, but I like Shaggy. I don't give a shit about Norville. I don't know who this guy is. Maybe he'll discover drugs at some point and turn into.
I'm kind of wondering if maybe this is one of those things where it would be more helpful to think about this not as, you know, like kind of like the Earth 616 versus like Earth whatever, you know what I mean? Like this is.
But
just
I like Earth 616. That's what I like.
And there's so many representations of that already existing, and so this is Earth 212 or whatever.
Exactly. So why should I spend my time on this when I've got much better representations, as you say? Like, why do I need to waste my time on this nonsense?
Because it might not actually be that bad, and
I've had my heart broken too many times, Archit.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like to me, there are things that this show is maybe trying to say, and maybe trying to say it in an overly ham-fisted way, especially early on, and maybe still very much finding its legs on how to say it. But I feel like maybe it is trying to say some things that could be worth listening to, could be worth giving a shot to.
But there's so many other shows, not even. I get that, but there's so many other shows, not even Scooby-Doo related, that don't require leaps of faith. They're just good from the outset, to varying degrees, and there's different things for different people, as you say, but this is precious time out of my life that I'm not getting back. And I don't want to spend that precious time with Norville, especially when he doesn't have Scooby. This is the big problem. They didn't have the rights to use Scooby-Doo in a Scooby-Doo related property.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
I am done. I'm sorry.
I was wondering where the dog was.
He's not going. I mean, maybe he'll come. Maybe they'll sort out the rights thing. Maybe they're holding him back for the last episode and he and Shaggy are reunited. I don't care. I know this show is called Velma, but here's the thing. I just assumed that it wasn't going to include any of the other Mystery Inc. characters. We wouldn't see Fred or Daphne or Norville. We would just focus on Velma, and I was fine with that. I was fine with having Velma be her own standalone character. But if you're going to include these characters from the show, you need to include all of them. And if you can't get the rights to include those characters or give them the same name, you probably shouldn't be making the goddamn show in the first place!
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you know, that's certainly one take on it. I don't know. Again, for me, I feel like that, you know, if you either A, think about it as just a completely different reimagining, a completely different universe, and then just accept it as that and are, for whatever reason, have the amount of time to spend on it, then, you know, I feel like it's not necessarily as bad. It gets better than what people are making it out to be. And, you know, I don't know. I was also thinking about it in terms of like some of the stuff that has been established and whatnot. And because this is trying to go back so much further, supposedly, this is taking it all the way back to the beginning of before they were a gang. You know what I mean? And so that, to me, is another reason why potentially some of these characters feel so unfamiliar right now, because people go through growth and maybe...
But we could still like them.
Daphne becomes more empathetic and becomes that core empathetic center of the group, but she starts off from a place where she has other, like, a more jagged edge to it that gets softened over time, and maybe that's what we're going to see.
But I know what you're referring to. I know what you're referring to, but the problem is, so you're referring to, I'm assuming, Daphne's quest to discover her birth parents, because this version Daphne is an adopted daughter of two women, and she's also Asian American, and she wants to find her birth parents and things like. Even that, they make a tasteless joke about it. They say that she was Velma says she assumed her birth parents were, I can't remember what it was in episode 2. It was Like something horrible. I don't know.
Mhm.
As comparing like one parent was Asian, the other parent was like a clown or something because she got red hair. It was something stupid. But here's the thing. You can't just give someone a fair amount of tragedy or like, oh, this is one sad thing about me, and then have us suddenly like them. Like the Velma's whole thing in this whole show is that her mum left. She disappeared, and she's trying to discover the mystery of what's happening to her. And she's been having these hallucinations, like these paranoia, fear-induced hallucinations about her mum that's making her like heart skip a beat and things like that. And it's just like, okay, that's interesting. In 99% of the other scenes, though, she's been horrible to people. Like, you can't just say, like, slap some bit of tragedy or pathos on a character and say, there, you like this character now. You can't have someone punch a nun in the face 5 times, and then you find out that, oh, actually, they were once bitten by a dog as a child. Like,
and as they go on, like, they do call out, actually, some of those tendencies of that character. Like, they do have other characters call out some of her own shitty behavior as being shitty. But again, it's one of those things where I think maybe they didn't reveal any of that depth early on enough, and just the start of it is just, it's just ham-fisted of like, look at how fucking edgy we are. Just look at us for being edgy. And it's only that. And so it like there is very little heart in the early episodes.
And it's just stuff happening out of nowhere.
It gets them, it justifies like a level of hatred for the show that I think if you do end up bearing with it long enough, it starts to mellow out, and it starts to give you a little bit more like it just starts to balance itself out a little bit better. Like those tendencies in characters get called out, I felt like in a more intelligent way. I mean, maybe some people, it might still be left wanting from it, but it gets better. Does it get better quickly enough? That might be the problem. That might be the thing that dooms this show.
Because I say it gets better. I hope it does. In fairness to you keep on saying that, but there is a foundation here that I'm worried is not going to go away. Small bits of mise-en-scene may improve slightly and be less egregiously awful, but then there's just stuff like, right, so one thing that really confused me, in the opening scene with all the shower scene we mentioned earlier, Velma comes out of nowhere, mastered something, and attacks Daphne with like a hockey stick. Why did that happen?
It just does, and then we never really get too much of an explanation. It just kind of establishes their adversarial relationship, but it doesn't seem to establish like real world consequences for actions in this universe.
That's a tip of the fucking iceberg. The big problem I have, and you say that it was a very rushed pilot and things like that. The problem I had with both episode 1 and also episode 2 is the pacing. The pacing, my God, they had a lot of stuff to give us. That's why I'm kind of glad they didn't try and give these characters more depth in the first episode, because otherwise, fucking, they would have gone a mile a minute. It's just so atrocious. Scenes flicked from one to the other with no rhyme or reason, with the barest of minimum of setup or anything like that. And it's just so weird. It's difficult to describe on a podcast. It's one of the things that really need to be seen to fully understand. But it's probably the worst I've seen for any pilot episode in a long time. 25 minutes or no. And in fairness, 25 minutes, most American shows these days are 20 minutes or something. Steven Universe never had this problem. Let me put it this way. But then Steven Universe is better on every conceivable level. There's even just minor things like, this is nitpicking, but remember the whole Velma gets her glasses knocked off and she's like, oh no, I've lost my glasses. In the pilot, Fred knocks Velma's glasses off. She doesn't do the whole, oh no, my glasses, I can't see bit. And it turns out the glasses she got from her mum. So she doesn't, like her mum's old glasses that she never needed, but she wears them anyway. Velma doesn't need her glasses. It's a small thing. It's not going to matter to anyone but an idiot like me. But it shows that, just again, a lack of respect for these characters and where they come from. You could have played up with like, oh no, my glasses, I can't see a thing without my glasses. Really? You're blind without your glasses? You should probably get contacts or something, or see a doctor, because that sounds way more serious. They could make a joke out of it. No, it's just nothing, because this show is not clever enough. I say not clever enough. There is one clever bit. the hallucinations. I kind of like them.
Really? That was the part to me that I was like, oh god, just okay, we get it. Like less of.
Oh, and they
little bit less
overdo
of
them
this.
by the second
Yeah.
episode, absolutely. I
Yeah.
don't question that. But I like
Okay.
the change in animation. I like how it
Yeah,
represents
yeah.
Velma's own inner fears. And her mum
Yes.
takes sensation these hallucinations like a creepy demonic figure that's worming away into her heart and crushing her heart. That's some really interesting ideas. Maybe,
Yeah.
as you say, they'll expand on that in later episodes. Who knows? But I did like that. But the problem is, that's the only bit of real vulnerability Velma gets. Everything else is just like brushed away, side off. And it's again, you could argue that would be part of her character. Like she uses her intelligence to keep people at bay. No, instead she just judges people. She goes on and on about how about she prejudges people. Like that's an established character flaw for her in the movie, as in, if you can call, constantly repeating your own problems a flaw. But here's the thing. Here's the problem I have with that. Characters need to have flaws. That's a good thing. People don't like judgy people. Okay? You can make us like a character that is a bit judgy. She's
But
just...
I
Go on.
don't know if she's meant to be likable.
I like Velma. Why would you want to watch a show about a character that you don't like unless it's Always Sunny? Which are original characters.
But that's what I'm saying, is I think that this is kind of like always sunifying the Scooby characters. Like that, I think that's what this show is kind of doing, is it's showing them as being like these very, very flawed people. And so you're not meant to necessarily like them. I don't think they're meant. I don't.
But we
think that
already
was
did.
ever
This is the problem. We
Like, I think
already
the
like these
point is
characters
for
from
them
our
to be
childhood.
unlikable. But that's the thing, is, I mean, and whether or not you agree with the artistic choice is a different matter, but I have an inkling like that the choice that they made was that they're like, no, we want them to be unlikable. And then
Because there's nothing
maybe,
to...
hopefully as you go, you start liking them. But again, they're testing your patience.
Well, because it seems like they hate their own audience, frankly. There's, again, a lot of the meta references. There's one thing in the episode 2 where just like, hey, what's 420 culture? I thought that was just adults who still watch cartoons.
Yeah.
You mean the adults that are watching this cartoon and people who
This
grew up on
cartoon right
Scooby-Doo
now,
and like
yeah.
Scooby-Doo are now watching this new adult version that's branded towards adults, and you're just insulting your own audience. Like, you can poke fun at things and people, and that's fine.
That's the thing, is those are the jokes where I felt like it was the kind of thing that when Clone High did that, in the 90s, like it was funny because it was new to do that. And by now it's been done so many times that it's just tired. And so instead of being funny, it just becomes like, really? Come on, can we just move forward?
Yeah.
It becomes tired. I for sure agree with that. Like there are so many elements, especially to these first two, and the first episode in particular, which is just, that's the real tragedy, is that a pilot is supposed to be like the foundation that sets you up and hopefully gets viewers on your side. And this one is just, as much as I'm trying to kind of be an advocate for the later stages of the show, the fucking pilot sucks, dude. Like, I mean,
A lot of the things I saw in the pilot
sucks.
were in the second episode. Not to that as much necessarily,
Yeah.
but they certainly were there.
Yeah.
There is carryover here, and I'm worried
For
it's going to
sure.
spiral. And you have to understand,
I
like,
think it
other
did
shows...
that. It mellows out, but
Good. I hope it does.
It's bad.
But other
It's the
shows
beginning.
didn't have to go through this. They didn't have to go this pilot growing pains. Harley Quinn, which is show I think is largely inspired by, did not have to go through that, even though it also had kind of a rush pilot. It was much smarter than that.
Yes.
This show, I think...
It treated the audience like adults. Like, it understood.
Yes.
You're going to be grown-ups watching this, and so there's a level of sophistication these jokes could potentially have. Like, yes, we can have fart gags, and we can have, like, a violent moment in one of the opening scenes, but it has to be done with a certain level of respecting that there are adults in the room. And that's what the Velma pilot really failed to do.
Because otherwise, these adults are going to switch over. We're not going to watch this, and we'll try and watch something else. Speaking of which, Capers, please don't do that while we give you this other round of ads. Check them out. So, let's talk about Mindy Kaling. We talked about her already in terms of her performance. You said that she was just Mindy Kaling doing Mindy Kaling, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. It wasn't
And
something
I mean,
that.
doing Mindy Kaling well, but is that what's called for here? I'm not
Well,
100% sure.
Well, is she doing it well, though? Because here's the thing I found, I don't know if this is her fault or a result of direction or bad animation, but her voice acting doesn't always match the animation. There are
Okay.
points where she sounds a little bit angry. The character looks calm. There's points where the character, she sounds a little bit calm, but the character is looking a little bit like sarcastic or sassy.
Right.
There are points, not all the time, but a lot of points where it doesn't quite line up. I don't know if that's because she's not as big a voice actor. She's a live action actor. I don't know if it's because she was unfamiliar with this kind of fast-paced medium, or recording for a TV show. I don't know, but something was going on here, distractingly so. I mean, I'm hyper aware of everything that's going on and I'm watching all the time. My life is a nightmare's existence, which offers no respite but the sleep and the embrace of the sweet embrace of death. But even I was distracted by just how inconsistent it was. A very inconsistent performance that wasn't always in a lot of the other characters. Some of them, but nowhere to this much. I don't know what's going on there. And it's annoying because I want to like her at it. I want to like her. She apparently said that she really likes the character, and that's why she wanted to make the show, and that's why she wanted to make it, Indian like her. So that's something at least. But then it's going into, apparently, and I am not an expert, nor do I claim to be. Apparently, a lot of the negative criticism that come out of the show is that it's perpetuating, quote, stereotypes against South Asian women.
What?
Apparently, there's a person called, I'm probably mispronouncing this, I do apologize, Asia Ifikar from Pink News, that the show's been accused of perpetuating the stereotypes, like I said, criticized for poor attempts at self-aware comedy and for slamming, losing the essence of what people love about the Scooby-Doo gang. Now, I white guy, I can't speak to the stereotypes against South Asian women.
I mean, I'm a South Asian man, so I can't speak to the stereotypes against South Asian women. But as a South Asian man watching it, I don't feel like I never felt mad about anyone's ethnicity in the show. Like, that wasn't the thing that I was taking any. I don't know. I never found a moment where I took issue with it. I was like, oh, that's kind of like racially messed up or whatever like that.
I mean, there are a few racial jokes in the movie, and the show, and I don't think they're handled well. But in terms of perpetuating stereotypes, it didn't seem like that to me. But then again, I constantly am doubting my own privilege, so I don't know.
Same here. So I might have just completely missed it. Maybe it was just something I glossed over. Maybe I happened to look at my phone.
Maybe two guys reviewing a female-led TV show was a bad idea. Who knows?
Yeah, so, I mean, I would love to see maybe more detail on what that journalist meant,
I mean,
alluding to.
Well, here's the thing. I think half the problem is there is a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. If you change a character's race in particular, and you make that character very much rooted in their ethnic cultural roots, a lot of people are going to complain about stereotyping because the character should be racially not racially blind, but sort of like blind in that argument.
That's the thing where I was like, I don't feel like they leaned too hard into her. Like, other than, she's Indian, her dad is Indian, and, they, every now and then, like, he called her Beti, which is, the Indian word for daughter.
Yeah.
Like, other than, like, a few sprinklings of it, it's not even like they were really pushing the cultural aspect of her identity at all. So I don't like positively or negatively. I felt like it was just kind of there. It was just kind of like almost an afterthought in a way.
But a lot of people often complain about those kind of afterthoughts. If you make the character with a race change too like neutral in that regard, people also complain saying, why are you delving more into a cultural roots? That's why I say damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
it's not
have no
fair,
right to
because-
say
Yeah.
if this does strike a good balance or
Because
not.
there are South Asian families that don't necessarily aren't just like all about the culture all the
Yeah.
time, 24/7. They're not turned on like that, and maybe this is a representation of just one of those families that's more Americanized, which there are plenty of, and especially to any white people getting offended on behalf of the brown people, like, hey, like part of like assimilation was that like you forced us to be like you and not speak our languages at home, and
Yep.
like made us feel bad about our cooking in our apartments and shit. So like that was part of the reason why maybe some families don't lean so hard into their culture anymore. You know what I mean? Like you can't
Side-eyeing the British Empire.
stuff happens. Like I don't know. So definitely for any South Asian women who criticize the show for those stereotypes, I would love to hear what the things were, because they must have just glossed over me. Maybe it was something I didn't notice because I'm a man. But
Because this is the problem that I have, is a problem with any show or movie like this, which, to my mind, just me, is objectively bad, but has representation in it of any kind, or like a desire to go for that, because all the negative criticism gets swept up in so much hateful, bigoted vitriol. And I hate that, because that's the thing, there's a lot of that out right there right now. A lot of people directed at the show and at these characters, and that's so awful and stupid and hateful, and it's fucking disgusting. But I also don't like the show, and it's just like, I don't want to be associated with those people. I just want to dislike my show in peace. Can't I dislike the show because of what's on the inside, not what's on the outside?
I mean, I think that's the dream that
Yeah.
MLK had, right? Is to be judged by the content of the character.
Yes, exactly. The awful,
was the
awful
dream.
character.
That was the dream, and unfortunately, this show, especially early on, like it's not good. There is no defense for the early stages of this show. There is no defense for the early stages of the show. It gets better if you have the inclination to give it that much time. I feel like it gets better. It gets good enough for me that I will see it through the rest of the way. But if you don't have the patience for that, I wouldn't blame you either, because
I have
it gets off on the
patience.
worst
It's just I
possible
don't.
foot.
I don't. The problem I have is I have limited time. I've got
Yeah,
a life,
for sure.
and the time I spend on this show with its own version of hatefulness and its own stupidity is time I'm never gonna get back. Even if it does get good,
You could be watching something else instead that's better.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And I could be watching something Scooby-Doo related that's better. Again, this is the crux of my argument. It's not that it's bad, it's that it's a bad version of Scooby-Doo when it didn't have to be. And the biggest problem I have with this, and maybe this gets better again in the next 2 episodes, but Velma doesn't actually do that much mystery solving. That's
Yeah,
the whole
now-
thing!
Well, I mean, as of now, that's actually a pretty central point of the thing, is that she has a very hard time solving mysteries because of that whole thing with her mom and the
Which is
the
ripped out of the fucking the
unresolved trauma
Nancy
that is
Drew reboot that no one liked or watched. Like, just
Wait, what?
hey, I know I'm just like a the Nancy Drew reboot from the CW, like in the same Riverdale sense. And
Oh.
I watched the pilot because I thought I want to check this out. Maybe it'll be good. Oh, the fool that I was! Because it starts
I
with
didn't
Nancy
even
Drew's.
know that existed.
No one did. I'm pretty sure, again, I was the only one. But me and like a bunch of like 14-year-old girls in Milwaukee knew about this show. But it starts with Nancy Drew, who is a teenager, saying, I used to solve mysteries, but I don't anymore. Not since the incident. And it flashes back to like a problem with like her parents or some bullshit. And it's just like, I'm lowering my voice and doing the gravelly thing, but that's the same kind of tone she used. And just like, cheer the fuck up, Nancy. Things ain't so bad. And that's the same kind of thing here. It's just like you know what? I want to see the character that's known for mystery solving solve mysteries. You don't have to lead into it. Have her be her whole thing. And have that be a point of conflict. Maybe the reason why she and Daphne aren't friends anymore, like they established in the show, is because she found out a bunch of stuff about, like, her parents or her backstory or something that she didn't want to be spread. Because maybe Velma's just like, I need to solve mysteries, I need to get the truth out there. But sometimes the truth can hurt people. That could be interesting. But no, instead they're just saying because of a trauma related to her mum, she doesn't solve mysteries anymore. And it's just like...
it's a mystery solving related trauma. If we're going a little bit, it is like a mystery. Like she solves a mystery and then like feels like that's the reason her mom left is because she like ruined a surprise, or it has something to do with like the night that her mom disappears, like her solving, and so that's why she's got this.
That's what I thought at first as well. That was I thought that was kind of interesting. You know, it's a kind of weak, but it's there at least. Right. But then it's revealed later in the episode that her mum left because she was kind of a sociopathic kid who poked out her eyeball.
That's the other. Well, I think that's gonna be another one of the like long arc mysteries that we're gonna solve over the season is how much truth there was to either one of those two sides of the story, you know, because I have a feeling like it's probably always the truth is somewhere in between. And so that's probably where they're getting is like that. It's not the guilt and it's not like that might be just what the father thinks as his justification for what happened. And because that's just what he presented. And then she had a flashback of that in that light. But as we know, memories can be very subjective and can be tainted by input. And, you know, maybe that was just like his way of coping with it. He was like, yeah, she hated us, so she left because we suck.
First of all, it wouldn't surprise me if this show doubled down on that at the very last minute, because they went back and forth a couple of times. But again, I'll reserve judgment. But here's the thing. This is why you need to watch Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, because not only does that show hold up very well, there is also a really interesting mystery in that show that's set up in episode 1, little hints, but then you slowly uncover more and more over multiple seasons, and it's actually really cool and really adept and really just engaging. Whereas this, they use it as an excuse for jokes about, oh look, she like poked out her mum's eyeball and the eyeball keeps on falling out constantly. Gross. This whole show is gross. I just want to say this. There's so many aspects, so many levels of grossness to it. And grossness is not the same as being an adult. I think we should all know this by now.
Yes. Unfortunately, I feel like this went to like that Carlos Mencia school of comedy.
I'm not familiar.
Okay. That was like, I don't know. There was this dude called Carlos Mencia, and he was just kind of known for offensive comedy, and like it was just like offensive, like in many cases, especially looking back now, it's like, yeah, that was just like you just saying the worst possible thing and expecting to be rewarded for it. And you know, and like that's kind of where we're at with this show a little bit too. And there's a serious balance and recalibration that needs to happen. If the show's going to survive in the long term, there's a very serious rebalancing and recalibration that needs to happen in terms of the tone and like the writer's room and the sophistication of the jokes.
Get Mindy Kaling far away from that script as far as you can. Give her a copy so she can do her lines, but that's it.
I don't know how much of the script is like, is she directly responsible for all of the script? Or how
No. I wouldn't say that, but a lot of this does seem very much her kind of humor. And I can like that in small doses. I fucking stuck with the Mindy project for way longer than I should have done.
Yeah.
But it's just, oh god, this every time you feel, with the first 2 episodes at least, every time you kind of got into the groove a little bit and just like, okay, I can tolerate this, I'll just ride out the current until we come to a park. Moment. They have the names of drugs that Daphne is selling in school, because apparently she's a drug dealer now, yay. And the drugs are called Zoinks, Jinkies, and Mystery Machine.
I actually thought that was really funny. I gotta be honest, I got a chuckle out of that. I thought that was funny.
I just found it kind of annoying because I was waiting for them to say, like, her to say jinkies. I bet you Velma's not going to say jinkies once in this show. And if they do, they'll make it some sort of meta reference like, jinkies. Wow, that was a really stupid thing to say, Velma. You're right. No one should say jinkies ever. That's a stupid thing to say for 50 years. Anyway, Then there's the last straw. The straw that broke the camel's back, sliced through its vertebrae, and tunneled down to the center of the earth was this. For years now, fans and myself have been calling out the explicit gay vibes that Velma has. And then later on, that has become into a lot of people saying that Velma and Daphne should get together. Nothing has come of that, not even real hints over the last cartoons. Then in this show, Velma is confirmed to be bisexual, and she and Daphne have a bit of a thing.
Yep.
Why is this the show where Velma and Daphne get together? I'm not saying I'm angry this happened. I'm just saying I'm angry this has happened here.
Because this is the raunchy adult version, so this is the first place they could probably get away with that.
Being bisexual or lesbian is not explicitly raunchy. It's not.
I know, but like for like a children's cartoon property, like I mean, I know.
Who cares? Daphne and Fred got together all the time.
Just like thinking of it in terms of like a Disney way of like,
That's
like you would have to have like that adults, that R-rated thing to be able to do it. You can't do it in the PG-13 properties.
Steven Universe was full of lesbians. Like, you can do this for kids. And here's the thing. If there's one bad thing about the Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated show, is that they tried to push Shaggy and Velma as romantic couple, and that did not work in the show, and they put a show that did not work.
That
But
doesn't make any sense.
But here's the thing. If you can put Shaggy and Velma together in a kids show, and surely, and Daphne and Fred for that matter, you can put Velma and Daphne together. And in fairness, they also in the show they also try to push that.
I don't think you understand how strong the wave of heteronormativeness in American media is.
But I think you need to watch more kids' cartoons these days, which is a weird thing to say to another grown man. But here's the thing. A lot of kids' cartoons are showing more and more LGBTQIA plus representation, not just for adults. It is happening for kids.
But that's more recent, right? And so this is the most recent Scooby-Doo thing. And so now they're showing that in the most recent Scooby-Doo thing.
You're right. You're absolutely right, and I do get that, and I am glad it's there.
There were no gay characters when I was watching cartoons back as a kid. Like back when I was sitting there on Saturday mornings eating my cereal, there was no. I mean,
if you ever watched He-Man, there were gay characters.
I mean, yes, yeah, there's implied deviance now when you go back, but as a kid, there was no gay. It was all very like super straight and often like Christian values kind of stuff. So they're only kind of starting to explore. That's been a very recent push in media in general, I feel. And so this is the most recent version that's allowed to get away with it. Earlier versions were probably released in a time where it was still harder for an executive, for like an old white guy Warner Brothers executive to be like, yeah, okay, I can sign my name on this.
And I guess that this is half the problem. It's got some new stuff, which is good, but it's tainted by all this other stuff, which is too cynical, too dated, even for today's standards, and it's just not what we wanted. And you shouldn't really judge a show based on what you want, but rather what you get. But the problem is we're so used to Scooby-Doo these days, and I'm glad they're doing a reinterpretation, but this is not the reinterpretation I wanted, and it's certainly not a reinterpretation that a lot of other people wanted. The reviews for this is the reason why we're doing this episode now, and not in late February, or early February rather. Wow, so actually we could have probably waited, but I'm patient, damn it, no. Basically,
well, I mean, here's the thing. I feel like it could be really interesting to revisit this once, like especially once you've seen all the rest of the episodes too.
That's a good point.
Just because I wonder if maybe you might. I'm genuinely curious to see like which way you end up falling on it if you see.
Will my stubbornness or my empathy win out? Who knows? But right now, people are pissed. The critics are split on Rotten Tomatoes, 50-50, which is pretty bad for Rotten Tomatoes, frankly. And a lot of people are really not liking. They're saying one or two good things, but you know what? This isn't really like your mum and dad Scooby-Doo. Audience scores, though. Audience scores. It has been absolutely trashed. everywhere. YouTube, Twitter, everything. And the problem is, I'm scared to look up reviews for this show because I don't want it to get mixed up in all the hateful, bigoted vitriol. I have a select amount of YouTubers that I watch for their kind of review stuff that I know would never subject to that. But if I see something new and I think like, ooh, might this be a new perspective that I've not heard of? I'm scared to go on it because I can't watch anything by this guy called Critical Drinker anymore because, well, he makes some good points. Most of the stuff is just like, I find kind of racist. Maybe that's just me, but it's just, God, no one is liking this. No one is liking this. People may be coming around to it a little bit, but that's not the same as liking it. I'm not trying to tell you what you feel, Archit, but
I mean, to put it one way, in terms of like how this has been received, I've heard people say that this show is basically a conspiracy theory to stop any woke content. Like they made woke, like quote unquote woke content so bad and so unlikable that even the people in favor of that are gonna not be in favor of this, and then we'll just cancel that kind of content altogether.
But it's not bad because it's woke. First of all, I'd say this show is not woke. It's very un-PC. But in terms of like the blind casting and things like that, that's not the weakness of the show. The case of novel, it's kind of annoying for a fan.
If you watch it, it's the writing is what's really fucking terrible, especially in the first 2 episodes. It's the writing, like the pacing, some of the direction, like you said, also like the animations and voice acting not quite matching up, like animations and acting, and because those things. It's just sloppiness. It's not any
absolutely. And this is the problem. Is there's the phrase I hate now is "go woke, go broke." Yeah. Every time someone says that in a review or something like that, they always ignore the plethora of good shows and good movies that do have representation and colorblind casting and things like race blind casting that are excellent. Fucking Vox Machina is one such example that we talked about earlier. And they always ignore that stuff.
Please tell the cast of Black Panther go woke or go broke, right? They're all counting fat checks right now. Like it's execution. Like if you do it well, it's gonna be awesome. And if you don't, then it and that's as it should be. It should be judged on the execution. If you execute the idea well, people will reward you for it. And if you do a bad job, it'll get panned as it should.
It's execution, and I also think it's intention. A show that can sometimes fail, even though a good example actually would be High Guardian Spice. I don't know if you've heard about this.
No.
I'm glad you haven't, because it's a fucking train wreck. It was this animation. This is American-made anime. And they stand by that phrase because it was done through Crunchyroll, people who do all the anime. And it was made by this quote-unquote diverse team of writers. They were all, as far as I'm aware, cisgendered women. They claim that was diversity. I don't think you need to look up the terms, the definition of the word diversity. But they were trying to make a show that was about, empathy and feelings while also going on magical adventures and shit like that with like these 4 female magical characters. A reasonably well-intentioned show, minor problems behind the scene, but for the most part, well-intentioned. It's a terrible fucking show. Terrible. They tried to represent properly. They failed. They had good intentions. And a lot of people are mad at that show, quite rightly, because it's a bad show, but at least we'd say they had good intentions. This show, I think, does not have good intentions. Not really. And that, for me, is the big problem, because regardless, go woke, go broke, whatever it is, compare this to another thing. Like, say, for example, The Witcher Blood Origins, another show that had a high production value, certainly, and an aim for representation, but the fans actually tore apart because not only was it not well made, but it was going against the established law of the Witcher world. The writers did not give a shit about that. That's all blown up in recent weeks and months, with Henry Cavill leaving the show and things like that. So it's one of those things where you got to be mindful about why you're doing what you're doing, and not just how you're doing it. And that's why the fucking Star Wars sequels failed, because they were made for money. They were made. They just said, we got Star Wars, so now we're going to make a bunch of sequel movies just cause. You got to be more mindful of it than that. You don't have to be very mindful. You can overthink these things. And in fairness to Velma, I don't think this show is as bad as Witcher Blood Origin or something like that. I think there was a nugget of good intention in there, but there was also a lot of bad intentions coupled with bad execution. Maybe those executions will get better. I'm going to trust you with this, Archit, and say that they're going to get better, in fact. But their bad intention is still going to be there. And that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I agree with. I mean, I can't fully speak to what the intention of the show is right now, but it does feel like, as of right now,
a lot of that is supposition on my part, I grant you.
Because it can be, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of is because it can be, and not necessarily is to do anything in particular. And again, I hope, you know, as I continue to give this show a chance, then maybe that changes. Maybe towards the end of it, I'm like, oh wow, they really like said something really important and deep with the whole overarching arc of this show, and that's cool, and they actually achieved something. But right now, it does feel like it's just kind of there to be there and to just be like, look, we're edgy and we're cool and we're reimagining things because that's what everyone's doing now, right? They're reimagining stuff, so here you go.
You can reimagine stuff all you like, but you can reimagine Star Trek as a bunch of fucking umbrellas drifting in the wind. There's a Spock umbrella and there's a Captain Kirk umbrella that are being blown away by a gale, and they have to go on an adventure through Paris to find their lost owners. Like, you can do that, but that's not Star Trek. Right. You know? There's a limit, there's a line, there has to be. And maybe this show needs to reach that line so we know where the line is. Or maybe the line is further ahead and we're just being trapped in our own little Scooby-Doo type bubble and we needed to be burst out of it. Who knows? All I know is I have not had a good time with this. I, generally speaking, have a good time with Scooby-Doo. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. But that's ultimately the silver lining, because this is not the last thing that Scooby-Doo will ever have. This is not the end for it. It does not end with Velma. It won't end with the thing that comes after Velma, or the thing that comes after what comes after Velma. Scooby-Doo will endure. It'll be around long after both of us are dead. At least I hope so. And new generations will always continue to enjoy it. And that's the great thing about it, being constantly updated and reimagined and reinvented and things like that, because kids can grow up watching Scooby-Doo. Always. I grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s. I grew up watching Scooby-Doo. People grew up in the 60s watching Scooby-Doo, in the 70s and the 80s. Scooby-Doo is timeless and immortal, and nothing can ruin that, not even Velma. On that note, we're going to have one last round of ads and we're going to our final thoughts. Take it away. Okay, Archit, quick fire time. Some things that are good about these first two episodes. I'll get the ball rolling. They got Frank Welker back as Friend's dad. That's one thing.
Yeah, so about the first two episodes only, very little. Probably, I mean, I feel like the animation style is definitely like visually kind of interesting. I did enjoy looking at it, and it was nice, you know. It was in a visual medium.
That's all we can hope for.
Yeah, so visually, I did kind of enjoy some of the stuff that they were doing, and again, I like it. There were points where it reminded me of Clone High in a good way, and there was points where it reminded me of Clone High in a not so good way. And so, you know, in terms of the positives, are those moments where, again, in terms of like some of the visual style and some like. There was just like certain moments where background characters had really weird facial animations, and just, I don't know, like little details like that I thought were kind of funny in the background if you were looking for little things like that. But yeah, the first two episodes are a tough watch.
Absolutely. I mean, I was trying to talk about some of the positive stuff, but oh god, even that we can't. Really do. Okay, hard. So here's the thing. Here's Archit. Okay, to round us off before we finish, give me just one reason to watch episode 3. Just one. Can be a spoiler, that's fine, I'm fine with that. Give me something that you think that I will enjoy about what's coming.
Well, if I remember correctly, the on-screen kiss between Velma and Daphne happens at the end of episode 2, I want to say.
Yes.
It's towards the end. So, that's one reason to watch episode 3, to see how they deal with the potential aftermath of such a monumental moment in terms of like both of these characters and their often speculated sexualities.
Did they handle that in a good way, would you say?
I think they, at the very least, didn't handle it in a bad way. I feel like they
Archit, you are not selling me on this. This is not going well.
I'm trying to hedge people's, I'm trying to not oversell
I appreciate that, I do.
I feel like it would, for me, I feel like the third episode, to be honest, is where the show started becoming actually watchable and tolerable, and where I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of starting to go some places. I could maybe see how this
starting to go some places and going places are not the same thing.
The first 2 episodes I legitimately watched because I had to do it for this podcast, and that was like the only reason that I got through the first 2 episodes. But because of the ending of that second episode, I was like, well, I mean, the entire internet has spoken about this moment for such a long time. I feel like, let me just see what happens in episode 3. And it was decent enough that I kept on going with episode 4, and that I am sitting here now being like, hey, it does get better, but it starts off so rough, but it does get better. Yeah. So, I think, if you're willing to give it a shot, or if you have to watch it for reviews, it'll get less excruciating, that's for sure. I am curious to see how you feel. Whether we follow up with an official podcast or you just send me a message, I am curious to see, once you watch episodes 3 and 4, and maybe further ahead, how you start feeling about it, whether your opinions soften at all, or if they become even more embattled and embittered.
Dear Archit, type. You lied to me. Type.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I've liked shows that got canceled, and everybody was like,
we've all done that.
Got canceled, thank God. But like shows that everybody else seemed to be very happy that it got canceled, and I was like, oh, I mean, I kind of liked it, but. So I don't know, like, like even Blood Origin, like I'm not super into like the canon of the Witcher universe, so I wasn't entirely sure how it contradicted it. It was
fair enough, because there will always be
and watch it. You know what I mean? Like it was good enough to watch, but
I get that. There will always be people who are just like, nah, let's just join for what it is, and people who know the backstory and know the characters, and that'll always be a thing. But yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. Like I said, this is just a review of the first 2 episodes, and it'll be interesting either way to see how this goes on. I don't have a lot of hope for this.
I think it's better if you really try to separate anything you know about the Scooby-Doo universe.
I shouldn't have to do that.
But it'll work better. I feel like it'll work better if you just think of this as just being a completely different thing where there's some tangential similarities, and that's it. And it's a totally different thing.
Oh, okay. So I don't have to watch like a Velma show. I just have to watch a show about a mean-spirited girl who's angry at everyone and everything, and who's equally angry at her.
Yeah, and hopefully eventually discovers how to put together a gang of teen mystery solvers.
Or I could just go and watch a show about a gang of teen mystery solvers. Well, we'll see how it goes.
They're already solving mysteries. How did they get there? That's what this show is wanting to answer. How did these teens with such different personalities ever come together to become the greatest mystery-solving team of never-aging teenagers ever?
Well, it's a mystery to me. On that note, we're going to end the show. Thank you very much, Archit, for joining me today.
Pleasure as always. Thank you for having me.
And if you do enjoy the show, Capers, please tell your friends, shout it from the rooftops. And if you haven't already, go back and listen to some other super episodes. Like, what was the last episode you were on, Archit?
Of what?
of this show?
This one?
Yeah.
I think it was 4, right? That's what's been released so far.
We're in episode 4.
Oh wait, what do you mean? Velma
What?
or?
No, of this show of Podcapers.
Oh, I don't even know. I like to pop in whenever you ask me to stop by. Always a pleasure. So I'm not
Go
sure.
back into the archives, Capers. You'll find Archit.
Yeah, I've been around here and there.
And you can listen to the show on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and all good podcast apps, or at podcapers.com. If you want to get in touch with us, suggest show topics, or maybe come on the show yourself, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at HP2HYC. Thank you very much to Dan Harris for our logo, the lovely microphone, the red and blue 3D glasses. Those are mine. And thank you for listening. This has been Podcapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. Cue the music!